You wake up in a hospital bed in 1793 Philadelphia. Your skin is yellow, your gums are bleeding, black vomit fills the basin beside you. Nobody will touch you, not even your own doctor. Yellow fever is tearing through the city and killing 1 in 10 residents. Here's the thing nobody tells you about the disease that emptied America's capital. The real horror wasn't the virus. It was what your own neighbors did to survive it. Let's stay in that bed a second longer, because the disease itself is stranger than most people realize. Your fever broke 12 hours ago. Then it came back worse. That's not random. That's the disease's signature move, the cruel twist that convinced early victims they were healing right before the second wave hit. Your eyes are yellow now too. Your urine has gone the color of coffee. And somewhere behind your ribs, an organ the size of a football is quietly shutting down. Here's the modern version of what's happening to you. Your liver is a chemical processing plant, the one filter standing between your blood and everything toxic in it. Yellow fever doesn't attack you directly, so much as it sabotages the filter. Bilirubin, a yellow-tinted waste product your liver usually clears, backs up into your bloodstream. That's the yellow skin. That's the yellow eyes. That's where the disease gets its name. And once the filter fails, your blood stops clotting properly, which is why you're bleeding from your gums, your nose, the lining of your own stomach. The black vomit isn't a symptom on its own. It's blood, digested, coughed back up. Notice what's missing from that list. No cough, no rash you can see coming from across a room. For the first day or two, you might just feel like you have the flu. A headache, a backache, a fever that seems ordinary enough to sleep off. That's part of what makes this disease so cruel. The remission phase, the moment you feel like you're recovering, is often the exact moment the virus pivots and starts destroying your liver in earnest. Your body sends you a false all clear right before the real damage begins. Doctors in 1793 don't know any of this. They don't know what a virus is. They don't know mosquitoes exist as anything more than a nuisance. What they do know is that people are dying faster than coffins can be built, and somebody has to have an explanation. Think about how disorienting that is. You've got physicians trained at the best medical schools in the world for their era, watching patients turn yellow, bleed from the gums, and die within a week. And every tool in their kit is built for a disease they don't recognize. No microscope strong enough, no germ theory, no concept of a virus at all. Just symptoms, guesswork, and desperation. So they invent an explanation. The leading doctor in Philadelphia, a man named Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, one of the most respected physicians in the country, decides the cure is to drain the poison out of you. Bloodletting. Massive doses of mercury and jalap to purge your bowels, over and over again, until you're vomiting and emptying yourself out at the same time your body is already hemorrhaging on its own. Some patients lose most of their blood volume in a matter of days. Rush calls it heroic medicine. Historians today call it something closer to a second disease, one delivered by the people trying to save you.
Picture yourself back in that hospital bed, watching this decision get made over you. You didn't choose your doctor's theory of medicine. You just got whichever one showed up. Some patients in this exact epidemic, in this exact city, in these exact weeks, are lying in beds where the treatment plan is rest and fluids. You are lying in a bed where the treatment plan is bleeding you until you're pale as the sheets. Same disease, same year, same 10 city blocks. Wildly different odds of walking out alive. Not every doctor in the city agrees with him. Across town, a French-trained physician named Jean Devez is treating patients with rest, fluids, and far gentler methods, and his patients are surviving at noticeably better rates. Alexander Hamilton, when he catches the fever, is treated by a doctor closer to Devez's camp and pulls through. It's an accidental controlled experiment nobody planned. 2 philosophies of medicine running side by side in the same burning city, one of them quietly outperforming the other, while the more famous doctor keeps insisting he's right. But here's where it gets interesting. The bloodletting isn't even the scariest part of this story. It's not close. Zoom out from your hospital bed for a second. Walk outside. Philadelphia in 1793 is the capital of the United States, the biggest, richest, most important city in the young country. 50,000 people, merchants, congressmen, foreign diplomats, George Washington himself living a few blocks from where you're lying right now. And by the end of September, this city is doing something no American city had ever done before. It's disappearing. 20,000 people flee. That's nearly half the population, gone in weeks. Washington leaves for Mount Vernon. Jefferson writes to a friend that everyone who can escape is escaping. Alexander Hamilton catches the fever early and flees with his family the moment he can stand. The federal government of the United States, the entire apparatus of a brand new nation, evacuates its own capital because a mosquito-borne virus nobody understands is killing 70 people a day, then 100. Now here's the wild part. The people who leave aren't the problem. Leaving a plague city is rational. The problem is what happens to the people who stay. Doors get marked.
Not officially, no health department is coordinating this, just neighbors, informally, marking which houses have the sickness so everyone else knows to stay away. Streets get soaked in vinegar. People walk around holding tobacco or camphor to their faces, convinced smell itself is the vector. Bonfires burn on street corners because someone decided smoke might purify the air. And when someone in a house gets sick, the response isn't always compassion. It's often abandonment. Spouses leaving spouses, parents leaving children, servants walking out mid-shift because staying means dying. Coffins pile up in yards because there's no time to bury them properly. Bodies sit uncollected for days. The wealthy who could pay for care are cared for. The poor who couldn't are often left where they fell. And mass burial pits open up on the edge of the city because individual graves have become a luxury nobody has time for.
It's not just the city turning on itself either. Word spreads down the coast that Philadelphia is dying, and other cities respond the way you'd respond to a computer flagging a corrupted file. Quarantine it, wall it off, refuse the connection entirely. Baltimore and New York set up checkpoints against anyone arriving from Philadelphia. Some smaller towns go further, posting armed men on the roads to physically turn back carriages of refugees. Sick or healthy, it doesn't matter which one. People fleeing the one place in America falling apart discover that nowhere else particularly wants them either. This is the part of the story that never makes it into the textbook summary. Everyone remembers yellow fever hit Philadelphia in 1793. Almost nobody remembers what the city actually did to itself while it was happening. And that pattern, fear turning into abandonment, abandonment turning into cruelty, it doesn't hit everyone equally. It lands hardest on whoever the city decides can absorb it. Which brings us back to your hospital bed. Remember, nobody will touch you. Not your doctor, not your neighbors. But there was one group of people in Philadelphia who were running toward the sick while everyone else runs away. And the story of what happens to them is honestly the darkest turn in this whole thing. Benjamin Rush, the same doctor draining half your blood for treatment, has a theory. He believes, based on essentially nothing, that Black Philadelphians are naturally immune to yellow fever. It's wrong. Completely wrong. But in the panic of the epidemic, Rush writes to two of the city's most respected Black leaders, Absalom Jones and Richard Allen, and asks them to organize their community to nurse the sick, since, in his mind, they have nothing to fear. Jones and Allen say yes. Neither man is naive about the risk. They've watched the same city panic everyone else has watched. They know the theory Rush is handing them might be wrong. But the sick need nursing regardless of whose theory turns out to be true. And nobody else in Philadelphia is stepping forward to do it. So they organize anyway, treating a flawed premise as a call to action instead of a guarantee of safety. They organize nurses. They organize gravediggers. They organize wagon drivers to carry bodies through streets so choked with fear that white residents won't do the job at any price. Free Black Philadelphians, roughly 2,000 people in a city of 50,000, become the backbone of the entire relief effort. They nurse strangers. They bury the abandoned. They do the work nobody else in the city is willing to touch, literally, while the president's own government has already left town. And they are not immune. That belief was false from the start. Black residents of Philadelphia die from yellow fever at essentially the same rate as everyone else, hundreds of them, including caregivers who caught the disease from the very patients they were trying to save. Here's the problem. Once the epidemic ends and the city starts rebuilding, a best-selling pamphlet is published, written by a well-known Philadelphia publisher named Matthew Carey, and it accuses Black caregivers of exploiting the crisis, overcharging grieving families, looting the dead. The claims spread fast because fear looks for someone to blame once the actual danger is gone, and blame is easier to aim at people who already have less power to defend themselves. Jones and Allen don't stay quiet. They write their own account, published under their own names, laying out exactly what their community did during the worst months of the epidemic and refuting the accusations point by point. It's one of the earliest published works by Black authors in American history, and it exists because two men who had just spent months burying their neighbor's dead were then forced to defend their own honor from the people they saved. Sit with that for a second. The group that ran toward the disease is the group that got punished for it afterward.
3 things happened to Philadelphia's Black community that autumn, and all 3 are true at once. They were recruited under a false premise, told they were safe when they weren't. They did the work anyway, at real cost, burying strangers while their own people died beside them. An insight. And when the crisis ended, they were the ones publicly accused of profiting from it. Recruited on a lie, worked past exhaustion, then blamed for the very generosity that nearly wiped them out.
That's not one bad chapter in the story. That's the whole shape of it, compressed into a single community's experience. That's the real yellow fever, not the virus in your bloodstream, the one in the city's trust. It infected who got left behind, who got blamed, who got remembered as a hero, and who got erased.
Now here's the twist that makes the whole epidemic almost unbearable in hindsight. Nobody in 1793 knows what's actually spreading the disease. They blame rotting produce on the docks, they blame foul air, they blame refugees who'd recently arrived from St. Domingue, fleeing revolution in what's now Haiti. They blame each other's hygiene, each other's morals, each other's neighborhoods. Entire theories of contagion get built and defended and published, and every single one of them is wrong. The actual cause is sitting in barrels of stagnant water on the Philadelphia docks. A species of mosquito called Aedes aegypti, breeding quietly in standing water barrels used to ship goods from the Caribbean, biting infected sailors, then biting healthy Philadelphians. That's the whole mechanism. No poison air, no moral failing, no conspiracy. A bug, doing what bugs do, in a city that had no framework to even imagine germs traveling on wings. It takes until 1900, over a century later, for a U.S. Army team led by Walter Reed to finally prove the mosquito theory. And the way they prove it is almost as unsettling as the epidemic itself. Volunteers, some of them the researchers' own colleagues, agree to be bitten by mosquitoes that had previously fed on yellow fever patients, just to see if they'd get sick. Some of them do. One of the physicians involved dies from the experiment. That's what it cost to finally close a mystery that had been killing people in the dark for over 100 years. Not a breakthrough in a lab overnight, but a slow, dangerous process of people deliberately exposing themselves to prove what an entire century of blame had gotten wrong.
107 years of blaming neighbors, blaming refugees, blaming filth, blaming each other for something a single insect was doing the entire time. Invisible, ordinary, easy to miss, the same way you'd miss a corrupted file hiding inside a program that looks completely normal. That's the shape of almost every panic like this one. The real threat is small and quiet and mechanical. The damage that actually destroys trust is loud, human, and entirely optional. Think about what that means for every decision made during those 4 months. The doors marked in warning, the relatives left behind, the pamphlet accusing the caregivers of theft, the armed men turning back carriages on the road out of town. None of it was aimed at the mosquito, because nobody knew the mosquito existed. Every ounce of fear, every act of cruelty, every moment of courage, too, got aimed at other people instead, because people were the only visible target anyone had. So go back to your hospital bed one more time. Your doctor still won't touch you. Your neighbors still won't come near the house. But now you know why. And you know what it cost the people who did come near. The nurses who caught the disease anyway. The gravediggers who got blamed for greed. The family down the street who fled and left a relative to die alone, because staying felt like signing your own death warrant too. Yellow fever killed about 5,000 people in Philadelphia that year. 1 in 10 residents of the entire city. It's still, to this day, one of the deadliest epidemics in American history, relative to the size of the place it hit. But the death toll was never really the terrifying part of this story. Death tolls are numbers. What's terrifying is watching a functioning city, the capital of a brand new nation, full of educated people, doctors, congressmen, neighbors who'd known each other for years, dissolve its own social contract in a matter of weeks, the moment survival started to feel uncertain.
The honest answer is we don't know exactly how many of yellow fever's 5,000 deaths could have been prevented by less panic and more coordination. Nobody can rerun 1793 without the mercury purges, without the abandoned houses, without the 2,000 caregivers who ran toward the sick and got smeared for it afterward. But the pattern shows up again every time a crowd gets scared enough. Quarantine ports turning away refugee ships, mass graves opening faster than mourning can happen. Whoever's already vulnerable ending up blamed for whatever's already happening to everyone. The mosquitoes died with the first hard frost in November. The fever ended almost overnight, the way it always did before anyone understood why. Congress came back. Washington came back. The city rebuilt. And within a few years, Philadelphia was, on paper, exactly as prosperous as it had been before. Yellow fever would return to Philadelphia 3 more times before the decade was out. 1797, 1798, 1799, each time smaller,
each time met with slightly less panic than the last, because the city had already learned, the hard way, which of its instincts to trust and which ones had gotten people killed. You can watch almost every epidemic since follow some version of that same arc. Confusion first, blame second, and only much later, sometimes decades later, an actual mechanism to point the fear at instead of each other. It happened with cholera in the 1800s. It happened with polio in the 20th century. It's happened again, more recently, in ways you probably don't need me to spell out. But you don't forget a summer like that. Not really. The scars from an epidemic like this were never going to show up in a ledger or a census count. They show up in quieter places, in which families stopped speaking to which neighbors, in which names got left out of the official histories, in which community had to publish its own defense just to be remembered accurately at all.
You just wake up one more time, in a bed that isn't a hospital bed anymore. Your skin has gone back to its normal color. Your gums have stopped bleeding. The basin beside you is empty and clean, and somebody has finally opened the window. And you remember, very clearly, exactly who came to your door when you needed them, and exactly who didn't. Because in the end, that's the only part of 1793 that ever really mattered. Not the fever, the proof.